Hi everybody, I just wanted to show you where I am in Blackboard. So I'm talking about your evaluation paper that's coming up at the end of the month, and I'm in Unit 4. And the evaluation data paper is down here, and I'm going to be looking at the scoring tool with you for this semester. So let's go to the top of the scoring tool. As you can see, it gives a page range of 6.5 to 10 pages. And it says it's highlighted in yellow. If it goes over 10 pages, I'm not reading more than 10 pages. So keep that in mind, 6.5 to 10 pages. You can be very succinct in this paper and still say a lot. So this is not where you try to write a 20-page paper. It's trying to get your point across as succinctly as possible. So I've highlighted here required because you are required to use the headings for this paper. If you do not use these headings, you will lose points. So this is an introduction to your paper. That means you're going to say something intelligent about evaluation, and then you're going to introduce the headings of your paper. You do not say, I will now discuss, or this paper will now review. It needs to be done in a way that is, it's in a narrative. It's not like a statement. As you've been turning in papers, I've been giving you ideas. If you don't feel like you've ever gotten an idea back on me on how to fix your introduction, then let's talk. So your evaluation is 1.5. This first is evaluation overview. You can write this section right now. It's 1.5 to 2 pages, and you can definitely do this in 1.5 pages, maybe a little less. So as you can see, the first thing you discuss in this section is what is the purpose of evaluation, and it will have at least one citation. Sometimes people have more than one. So this is not like the other papers where you said, what is the correct way to do something? This is the purpose. There is no one correct way to do evaluation. It's very complex. So for this reason, you will give what is the purpose of evaluation in health education. Then you're going to say the purpose of our impact evaluation. That's about a paragraph. What was the purpose of our summative or impact evaluation for the health fair or event that we had? Then those two are this is impact. Then this is the only section in the paper where we talk about process or formative evaluation. So in this section, excuse me, you're going to either do a narrative or a chart. I prefer a chart. It's easier to read. On the left-hand side, put what was assessed or evaluated and how did we assess or evaluate it. That we probably have completed at least 25 or 30 formative or process evaluations this semester. You only need to identify 3. This is going to take 1/2 page or less. I can't imagine you having enough to write for 1 page. You're just putting in a statement here and a few sentences here for each row. So the next section is data collection. This is going to be 1/2 to 1 page. You can start to write this, but you won't be able to finish it probably until the end of this week. You are going to list the steps to the data collection process from the pre-test all the way through to the post-test, and how we gathered the data and how we manipulated the data mathematically, which is what you're working on now. So once you finish manipulating the data this week, you'll be able to write this section also. So from the point of the pre-test to the point of getting your data analyzed, what did we do? You can do this as a list, or you can do it 1 to 2 paragraphs. Either way is fine. Do not do both. Data analysis. This is the hardest part of your paper. This is where most of the points are, and this is where the critical thinking occurs in this paper. This is 2 to 3 pages. It's the biggest section of your paper, and that's because you're discussing very important information. So the first way, data analysis, you're going to talk about data analysis in 2 different ways. The first way, everybody's using the same data analysis tool, and we're looking at chi-square. When we meet this week, we'll talk about trends in your data and how to read your data to determine whether or not your event was a success. We're going to look at what your data mean. What do they tell you about your test questions? What do they tell you about your needs assessments? What do they tell you about whether or not you met the needs of the audience? What about your program? Did you meet diverse learners? Your data, this few little pieces of data that you're going to have will tell you a tremendous amount about your population. Next, next week when we meet, you're going to compare your data to the other groups in the class. So Tuesday's group will compare to each other, and Thursday's group will compare to each other. And when you compare your data to everybody else's data, what does that tell you? Does it tell you that, anything about the populations, that did certain populations do better? Were certain populations more informed? I don't know the answer to this question yet because I have not seen your data. I will know the answer to this once I look at your data this week. Every semester it's different. We have no idea what the data, I have no idea what the data will tell us at this point. I'm waiting to see what you come up with. Then you're going to choose a second way. And when you're choosing a second way, if you're not sure how to evaluate an event without using statistical analysis, then I just recommend you do some reading on how to evaluate programs. There's very simple things you can do. We're doing a complex one. I want you to come up with a more simplified one. In the beginning of the planning process, we did a needs assessment. You have goals and objectives. There's a tremendous amount of things you've done that you could go back and use to evaluate the success of your event. So you're going to come up with that second way, and you're going to talk about what it tells you about the success of your program. Sometimes the quantitative data and this second format, it could still be quantitative, but it's not going to be statistical analysis. Sometimes the first and second way that you evaluate it tell you the same thing. Sometimes they tell you something different. Again, I have no idea because I have not seen your data. And make sure at the very end of this section, you state whether or not this event was a success based on your data. So whatever it is you say, support it with your data. So I want to be very clear about your data. Your grade on this section is not based on how great your data says your program was. You could have your data could say you all were awesome, and you could fail this section of the paper. Or your data could say that your presentation was horrible, and you could get all the points in this section of the paper. This is scored by your ability to analyze what the data say. Nobody's perfect. Programs are never perfect. I'm not expecting everyone to have perfect data that says everything was great. That's very rare to ever happen, even if you've been doing this for 20 or 30 years. All I want you to do is take the data you have and make sense of it. I have had one group in all my time of teaching this that changed their data to make it look really good. And I know what data typically look like, so when things are really out of whack, then that's problematic. So remember, don't try to fudge your data to make it beautiful. Just, it is what it is. I'm only concerned that can you look at the data and make sense of it. So the next section is recommendation for data collection. This is 1 to 1.5 pages. I have no idea how you could write 1.5 pages on this, but some people might want to. So you're going to discuss either recommendations on how to make this collection analysis better, or you're going to talk about why it was perfect. If something's wrong, how would you fix it? If something went well, how would you recreate that in another program that you do? So we're looking at from the time you start collecting data on the pretest, all the way through all the manipulation of the data in the section above. What went well and what did not go well? If it did not go well, how would you fix it? If it went well, how would you recreate it? This section right here is highlighted because this is very important. I'm not asking you to critique and make recommendations for Health 430 classes next semester. I'm asking you to look at what you did and make recommendations on what you would do different for your next event. That's all I want to see. So I'm asking you to really sit back and analyze what happened with the data, how we what we did from pretest all the way through to analysis, and which of those steps went well, which did not go well, and how could you possibly either fix errors or recreate the successes. And then we have a section called Summary of Learning. In this section, you're going to list the goal you made for yourself in Unit 1 for this unit from the pretest, and you're going to use that goal and the overall experience with evaluation in this unit to talk about, did you meet your goal? How can you prove this? If your goal was about ethics, you can still answer this question about ethics. Do not change your goal. So this is asking you what your goal was from Unit 1 for this unit, and then think back over what we did and what you learned. If your goal is for ethics, but you still want to talk about evaluation, then talk a little bit about ethics and a little bit about evaluation. Then overall, what have you learned about evaluation and the process? Now that you've been through this whole process, what have you learned about evaluation? I want you to look at everything you've written in this paper to this point and try to pull it together and look at what you actually learned from the evaluation process. Then the last part of your paper is your summary, and this is a summary to your paper, and it should be very similar to the introduction. It says here you are going to submit 3 documents. You're going to attach 3 documents, maybe 4 when you submit your paper. I will get more clear with you on this once I meet with your groups, because every group does something slightly different, so that kind of dictates what happens here. Your document 3 is always in the document 4 is always in the paper. Usually document 2 is in the paper. So you have 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I will tell you which ones will go in your paper and which ones will go into the shared drive for each group. So depending on what I tell you, the first document will be your paper with a title page as required by APA. Remember, the title page is not part of the 10 pages. So if your paper is 11 pages long, that means it's actually 10 because the title page is given at page 1. Document 2 will be your word attachments, and this is what I'm going to tell you. Out of steps 1, 2, and 4, I'm going to tell you which ones should go in this document. And that will be different for each group, and sometimes it will be different within groups based on if people are working alone or with peers. Document 3 is your reference list, and document 4 sometimes goes into the share drive and sometimes goes into your paper. This is step 3 of the evaluation process. I don't know what we're going to do yet, but I will know by the time I finish meeting with you. So you're going to attach, it says you're going to attach all 4 steps. That's what it says, but this could still vary. So after we meet, I'll be more clear with each of your groups. And make sure before you submit you have those documents. So I just want to look at the scoring tool with you. The first thing is, on the left side, certain areas are highlighted because these are points that you should just be able to get. They're about following directions and just stating facts. So if you have an introduction, body, and summary, and it's done correctly, that's 5 points. The evaluation overview, it tells you how it splits out into 10 points. The data collection, it tells you how you get 2 points. The analysis, which is 17 points, that's where the majority of the points are. It tells you how the sections are broken down. So all the questions that I just went over, it tells you how to get the maximum number of points for each one. Recommendations on data collection, yes or no, did you do that? And then a summary of your learning, it tells you how you get to 6 points. And I see I need to fix this, and I will. Oh, there it is. So this goes up to 3, and this goes to 3, and I will fix this to make it more clear. And then these things, in my opinion, are gifts to you. Do you have the in-text citations that you need? Do you have no more than 4 errors in this paper? Do you have sufficient APA references, and are they cited correctly? Then there's an attachment below here that you have to fill out, and that is one of the word attachments. Is that done correctly? Have you done your peer and self-evaluations? And do you have all the appropriate data sheets? These are all simple directions. So 5, 10, 15, I think this is 18 points. Just this one section for following directions and doing things correctly as a senior should. So before we look at this second attachment document down below, I want to point this out to you all. In Blackboard, in the evaluation section, there is a peer and self-evaluation form. Those peer and self-evaluations are an attachment to this paper, and they are submitted separately. So whoever submits the paper submits only their own peer and self-evaluations. Everybody submits their own peer and self-evaluations. Once whoever submits the paper for a group submits it there, and everyone submits it in their own place, and you should also submit it in the place where this paper would be. And if you have questions, I'm not sure I've said that as clearly as possible, but everyone does a peer and self-evaluation. They do not all go together. No one sees them except for me. After the semester is over, I copy and paste everybody's comments and put them together and send them to you without people's names on them. If anything is in the narrative that I think gives away who wrote it, I change the wording a little bit, because the point of this is that you grow professionally from listening to your peers and their opinion of your work in the class. So the other document that's going to be part of, here it is. Before you submit, make sure you have a title page, a reference list, attachments, NCHEC standards, peer and self-evaluations, and then if you're doing a group project, the peer and group evaluation. So this is NCHEC standards. Okay. So in our field of study, the National Credentialing Board for Health Educators, there are 8 standards for our field. This class is supposed to cover areas of all 8. They are listed on pages 2 to 7 of your syllabus. What I want you to do is I want you to give each of those a letter of A to F and explain why you're giving it that. You're not scoring me. You're not scoring each other. You're asking yourself, how well did the class do this? This is very important because say 75% of you say that we didn't cover ethics and professionalism. Well, if 75% of you said we didn't do that and the class got a poor grade for that, then that's something I need to fix in the class. It also forces you to really start to look at the NCHEC standards, because when you take the CHES exam, these are the 8 standards on which you're tested. So this is an important paper, and I think it's worth 5 points, so it would be silly not to do it. If you're working in a group, here is the partner place in this paper. If there's a substantial difference in grades, you get your own grade or close to your own grade. You don't get a group grade. And if there is not an equitable distribution of work, the grades are impacted also. So I don't expect somebody to be doing the introduction and summary and think they're going to get the same grade as somebody who did major critical thinking areas. That's just not going to fly in this paper. Okay. So then I've put in what I believe are all the scoring areas. And this is the example. You're supposed to fill this in. If it's not filled in correctly, you're going to lose points. It's just that simple. Okay, so that's the paper. It's almost 20 minutes long, but there's so much to talk about with this paper. It's worth a lot of points. So if you have questions, please bring them to class. And I really think that this paper will help you think and reflect about what we did in the class to determine, was it successful or not? And then really think about things that were successful, how to recreate them, and things that were not successful, how to tweak them and fix them. So that's it for now. I will see you in class. I hope this is helpful.